The lobby of Hawthorne Industries glimmered like a cathedral of glass and marble. Journalists crowded near the golden elevators as security men blocked the entrance. In the center of the chaos stood Laura Mendez, the company's chief legal counsel, pale, poised and trembling. Across from her, Richard Hawthorne, her billionaire boss, towered like a judge delivering a sentence. His voice echoed, "You betrayed this firm." Phones lifted, cameras flashed. The statement hit like thunder. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Laura's name appeared on breaking news banners already rolling across television screens nearby. She could feel the heat of humiliation on her face, but she refused to lower her eyes. Richard's accusation cut deeper than any wound. This woman leaked confidential documents to sabotage my deal. For a moment she almost laughed, not from humor, but disbelief. The man who had asked her to commit a crime now painted her as the criminal. Around her, colleagues whispered. Some pitied her, others avoided her gaze. In the reflection of the marble floor, she saw herself, not broken, but betrayed. "I did nothing wrong," Laura said, her voice trembling but steady. "I protected the law, and that's all I ever did." Richard smirked, turning to the cameras. "Then let the law protect you now." The guards opened the glass doors. Her career, 5 years of loyalty, ended in a single headline. Outside, rain poured like judgment from the sky. It drenched her suit, washed the makeup from her cheeks, and blurred the city lights into silver streaks. As she walked away, a red security light blinked high above, silently recording her final act of dignity. The truth was captured. It only needed someone brave enough to reveal it. And before we dive into how everything came to this, take a breath and imagine. If you were Laura, would you have done the same? Would you risk your career to defend what's right? Tell me in the comments, because your opinion matters here. And if stories about truth, courage and justice move you, make sure to subscribe and like this video so you never miss what comes next. Laura's nightmare is only beginning. 3 days earlier, Laura was sitting in her office, surrounded by case files and the quiet hum of rain against the windows. She had just closed a merger deal when her phone buzzed with a message. "Come to my office now." It was from Richard himself. Her heart tightened. He rarely called her directly unless it was something serious. When she entered, the atmosphere was different. The blinds were half closed, and a thick folder sat on the desk beside 2 glasses of whiskey. Richard didn't look up at first. He was signing something with slow precision. "Laura," he said finally, "I need your help with a situation. A contract needs to be adjusted." The pause before that last word carried poison. Laura frowned. "Adjusted how?" He slid the folder toward her. Inside was a contract already dated, last quarter. "I want you to refile it as if it was signed this week," he said calmly, almost casually. Her legal instincts froze. "That's falsification," she whispered. "You're asking me to alter evidence." Richard smiled, cold and effortless. "I'm asking you to protect this company." In that instant, Laura felt the invisible line between loyalty and crime blur beneath her feet. She knew saying no would make her a target, but saying yes would make her an accomplice. The clock on the wall ticked once, loud and heavy. Outside, thunder rolled across the city like a warning she couldn't ignore. And that was the moment everything began to collapse. The rain hadn't stopped since that meeting. It drummed against the windows of Laura's apartment as she sat at her kitchen table, staring at the same folder Richard had forced into her hands. The contract inside seemed to breathe on its own, its forged date like a pulse of guilt. Her pen lay untouched beside it. No matter how much she tried to rationalize, one truth remained. Signing it would be a crime. The next morning, She arrived early at the office, hoping to reason with Richard before the day's meetings began. His secretary avoided her eyes, her tone clipped. "He's expecting you." Laura entered the private office, a space so immaculate it felt inhuman. Richard stood by the window, watching the city as if he owned it. Without turning, he said, "I trust you've come to your senses." Laura's heartbeat quickened. "You're asking me to falsify a legal document. That's not protecting the company. That's perjury." Richard turned slowly, his expression unreadable. "It's a simple correction," he said, stepping closer. "A signature backdated, a formality that saves thousands of jobs. Or would you rather see innocent people lose their livelihoods because of your conscience?" The manipulation was surgical. He twisted morality into guilt, ethics into selfishness. Laura clenched her fists beneath the table. "If this deal was illegal," she said quietly, "then it's already broken." Richard smiled, the kind of smile that had closed deals and silenced enemies. "You'll learn that in this world, Laura, the law bends to those who pay for it." The sentence hit harder than any threat. For a long moment they simply stared at each other, predator and prey, truth and corruption. The hum of the city outside felt distant, muffled by tension. Then Richard picked up his pen and tossed it toward her. "You have until tomorrow," he said. "Either you fix this or I'll fix you." Laura walked out of his office numb, the pen still in her hand, like a weapon she refused to use. The elevator ride down felt endless. In the mirrored walls, she barely recognized the reflections staring back. The ambitious lawyer who once believed in justice now looked like someone running from it. Back at her desk, she opened her laptop and began drafting her resignation letter, but her fingers froze. Resigning wouldn't erase what she knew. Richard would simply find another lawyer, one willing to sign, and when everything fell apart, she would still be blamed. She deleted the letter and sat in silence, the hum of fluorescent lights pressing down on her chest. That night, Laura couldn't sleep. The city outside glowed with neon blues and passing sirens. Her mind replayed every word Richard had said. The law bends to those who pay for it. She thought about the people whose jobs he used as shields. Maybe he was right. Maybe truth had no value here. But deep down, she knew silence would make her his accomplice. By dawn, her decision was clear. She opened her notebook and began to document everything. Dates, conversations, evidence. Each line was a small act. A rebellion. A shield made of ink. If he wanted to destroy her, she would make sure he did it in the light. The storm outside had eased, but a greater one was brewing inside her heart. And somewhere in the building's security archives, the red camera light blinked again, still watching, still waiting. The next morning, Laura arrived at the firm with dark circles under her eyes and a quiet determination in her step. She rehearsed her arguments, ready to defend her decision to refuse Richard's demand. But when she reached her office door, her keycard didn't work. She tried again. Denied. The light on the scanner blinked red like an omen. Confused, she approached the receptionist. "There must be a mistake," Laura said. The woman looked uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact. "Mr. Hawthorne said your access was under review." Under review. Those two words sliced through her composure. Within minutes, 2 security guards appeared beside her. The entire office seemed to slow down, every whisper amplified. As she gathered her things, she noticed her computer screen locked remotely. "Wait," she said. "I need to back up my files, my case notes, my correspondence." One guard shook his head. "All confidential property, ma'am." Her stomach turned. Her evidence, everything she had documented the night before, was gone. Deleted or seized. She tried to call Richard, but his assistant's voice was rehearsed and cold. "Mr. Hawthorne is unavailable. He suggests you speak with legal counsel. The irony hit hard. I am legal counsel. The office that had once been her sanctuary now felt like a crime scene. Every step toward the elevator echoed like a countdown to ruin. Outside, her phone vibrated non-stop. News alerts flashed her name. Corporate lawyer under investigation for breach of confidentiality. Her chest tightened. How? The only explanation was that Richard had struck first, leaked false accusations before she could speak. He was rewriting the story, turning victim into villain. She tried to call a colleague she trusted, but he didn't answer. Then another. Same result. Silence. Everywhere. The isolation wrapped around her like a noose. She felt her reputation slipping away in real time, pixel by pixel, post by post. The machine was already working to erase her. By afternoon, she was summoned to a disciplinary hearing. 3 board members sat behind a glass table, their faces stiff and unreadable. They questioned her about leaked files she'd never seen. Every word she spoke sounded like defense, not truth. When she demanded evidence, one of them replied, "The source is confidential." She laughed bitterly. They were quoting her own legal lines back at her. After the meeting, she stepped into the empty hallway. Her heels clicked against the marble floor, echoing like gunshots. She glanced up at the security camera. Above the exit, the same one that had recorded her argument with Richard days ago. For the first time, she wondered if that unseen eye could save her, or if even that footage was now under his control. That night, Laura sat on a park bench near the waterfront, staring at the city skyline reflected on the river. The wind was sharp, cutting through her coat. She felt stripped of everything, her job, her name, her voice. Yet somewhere beneath the despair, a new feeling began to form. Not fear. Anger. As the lights of Hawthorne Tower glowed in the distance, she whispered to herself, "If he wants a war, he'll get one." The words lingered in the air, carried by the wind. Behind her, unnoticed, a man watched from a parked car. Ethan Hawthorne. His eyes followed her silhouette with quiet curiosity. He didn't know it yet, but her fight for truth was about to become his as well. The story spread faster than she could breathe. By noon, Laura's name was on screens, headlines, and gossip threads that twisted the truth into spectacle. Corporate lawyer leaks client secrets. Hawthorne betrayed by inner circle. Each headline stabbed deeper than the last. She sat on her couch, laptop open, watching her own reputation burn in real time. Calls poured in, but none were kind. Former clients demanded explanations. Journalists camped outside her building, shouting questions through the rain. Her neighbors avoided her in the hallway. Even her parents left a single message on her voicemail, "We love you, but maybe you should stay quiet for a while." That one broke her more than the rest. By evening, the law firm released an official statement, brief and brutal. Laura Mendez has been terminated for violation of client confidentiality. No defense, no nuance, just an execution by press release. The comment section exploded with rage and mockery. To the world, she was already guilty. Laura unplugged her phone and turned off the lights. She sat in the dark, surrounded by silence and the faint hum of city traffic below. On her coffee table lay the only thing she hadn't thrown away, her bar association badge. It caught the dim glow from the streetlights, a small piece of metal now heavy with shame. Her mind kept replaying the moment in Richard's office, the pen tossed across the desk, his calm voice saying, "Either you fix this, or I'll fix you." She realized he hadn't meant it as a threat. It was a promise he'd already kept. For the first time in her career, she had no power, no platform, and no proof. Desperation drove her to her computer again. She searched legal forums, whistleblower sites, anything that might help her fight back. Every option seemed impossible. She had no access, no allies, no evidence. Her entire case rested on a security camera she no longer controlled. A single red light that might have gone dark forever. Tears blurred her vision. She wasn't crying out of weakness, but exhaustion, from fighting a battle she never chose. Her apartment felt smaller by the hour, its walls closing in like accusations. She wondered how many other people Richard had destroyed the same way, quietly, efficiently, without a trace. Then, just as she closed her laptop, her phone buzzed once. A single notification, unknown number. No name, no profile picture, just one message. "They're lying. I can prove jumped. Her fingers hovered over the screen. Could it be a trap, another setup? Or was it the first thread of truth pulling her out of the dark? She typed a single word in reply. "Who?" No response came. The typing bubble flickered once, then vanished. Silence again, but a different kind this time. Not empty. Expectant. For the first time in days, Laura felt something other than fear. She felt a question forming. What if I'm not alone? Outside her window, the storm began to clear. The clouds broke just enough for moonlight to touch the city's glass towers. Somewhere inside one of them, a young man stared at a monitor, replaying a video no one else had seen. And in that moment, fate quietly connected them. The woman destroyed by truth, and the man who still had it. Ethan Hawthorne had never wanted to work for his father. But the name Hawthorne carried weight, a legacy he couldn't escape. He spent his days buried in the IT department, fixing systems no one cared about and pretending not to see the corruption that oiled the company's gears. He told himself ignorance was peace, until that night. The office was empty, washed in the bluish glow of computer screens. Rain tapped the windows, rhythmic and constant. Ethan stayed late, scanning server logs flagged for unusual access. He assumed it was routine maintenance, until he noticed a restricted folder marked with his father's personal code. Curiosity won. He opened it. Inside were archived security feeds, time-stamped and encrypted. One caught his eye, the meeting between Richard and Laura, 3 days before her dismissal. He clicked play. The footage flickered, grainy but clear enough to hear every word. His father's voice filled the speakers, calm, commanding, venomous. "Sign it, Laura. It's just a correction." Ethan leaned closer. Laura's voice cracked with disbelief. "That's forgery, Richard. It's illegal." Then came silence, and his father's reply, "The law bends to those who pay for it." Ethan froze. The sentence, delivered so casually, shattered years of denial. His stomach twisted. The woman his father destroyed was telling the truth. He played it again, then again. Each replay deepened the horror. His father hadn't just coerced her, he'd planned her downfall. Ethan looked around the darkened office, half expecting someone to burst in. The realization settled cold in his chest. He was now holding evidence that could end a dynasty. His first instinct was to delete it, to pretend he'd never seen it. But then he remembered the look on Laura's face as she stood in that viral clip, the humiliation, the silence, the rain. He'd seen her that day from afar, standing in the lobby as cameras surrounded her. He hadn't understood then. Now he did. He transferred the footage to a secure drive, his hands trembling. Every keystroke felt like treason. The building was silent except for the low hum of machines and his own heartbeat, fast and shallow. When the transfer completed, a single message appeared on his screen. "Backup saved, 1 file." It felt like both salvation and a death sentence. Ethan sat back, staring at the city lights beyond the glass. His father's empire glittered across the skyline, a kingdom built on deception. And now he knew the truth beneath the glass, fragile, cracking, waiting to fall. He whispered to himself, "What have you done, Dad?" The words barely left his mouth, but they echoed inside him. Before shutting down his computer, Ethan opened his email and typed a single message to an encrypted address he'd used once before. A journalist named Maya. Subject: "I have something you need to see." He hesitated, finger hovering over send. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. He clicked. The message was gone. And somewhere across town, Laura sat awake by her window, unaware that the first piece of her redemption had just been set in motion by the man she least expected, the son of the man who destroyed her. Sleep was impossible. Ethan lay awake, staring at the ceiling as rain whispered against his window. The image of Laura refusing to sign the contract played in his mind like a ghost that refused to leave. Every time he blinked, he saw her eyes, terrified but defiant. He envied that kind of courage. He had never possessed it. By morning, his father's name dominated the news cycle again. Investors praised another merger, another victory. Richard's face filled the screens of every financial network, his smile flawless. Ethan turned off the TV, disgusted by how easy it was for lies to look like success. His phone buzzed, a message from his father. "Lunch today. Family only." He didn't reply. He went to work early, carrying the flash drive in his jacket pocket like contraband. The footage felt heavier than metal. It pulsed with consequence. When he logged into his computer, he saw Laura's profile photo in a recent internal memo. Former employee, under investigation. Just words, stripped of the human being he'd seen suffer. At noon, he met Maya at a quiet diner near the river. She was a journalist who had once written flattering articles about Richard's philanthropy. Now, she stirred her coffee without looking up. "You said you had something," she murmured. Ethan slid the drive across the table. "This shows what really happened to Laura Mendes." Maya's eyes narrowed. "Do you understand what this means?" He nodded slowly. "If this goes public, my father loses everything. His company, his reputation, maybe even his freedom." Maya leaned forward. "And you'll lose yours too. You'll be the son who exposed his own blood." The words hit him like a verdict. For a long moment, neither spoke. Only the sound of rain on the window filled the silence. Ethan took back the drive, gripping it tightly. "Not yet," he said. "I need to think." Maya watched him go, sensing that hesitation might be his undoing. Outside, the wind howled down the street, tearing through his coat. Every step felt heavier, like he was walking deeper into a storm of his own making. That night, he returned to the office long after everyone had gone. The city outside was dark except for the glow of Hawthorne Tower, the monument to his father's power. Ethan placed the drive on his desk and stared at it. The truth sat there, silent, waiting for him to choose between loyalty and justice. He opened the video again, unable to look away. Richard's voice filled the room. "The law bends to those who pay for it." Laura's reply came soft but firm. "Not if someone stands against you." Ethan paused the clip on her face, the face of someone who had lost everything and still refused to yield. He whispered, "You stood alone. Maybe you shouldn't have to." He opened his laptop and began encrypting the file for upload. His hands trembled as the progress bar crept forward. He knew once he pressed send, there was no way back. He thought of his father's smile, the empire, the family name. Then he remembered Laura's silence in the rain. He hit enter. The upload started, a single file transferring into the unknown. Ethan exhaled shakily, heart pounding. The moment it finished, he unplugged the drive and slipped it into his pocket. The city lights flickered outside, reflected in the glass like stars trembling in water. Somewhere deep down, he knew it. Nothing would ever be the same again. The night air was cold and restless as Ethan sat alone in a dim cafe, his laptop glowing like a secret he wasn't meant to hold. The footage file pulsed on the screen, ready to be sent. Outside, neon lights shimmered through the rain, painting red streaks across the window. His hands hovered over the keyboard. One click could destroy everything or set it free. He connected to the encrypted whistleblower network, his heart pounding in his throat. The website's interface was plain, sterile, anonymity promised but not guaranteed. He uploaded the footage, line by line, minute by minute. Laura's trembling voice filled his headphones as the progress bar climbed toward completion. "I won't do it," she said. "You're asking me to commit a crime." When the upload reached 100%, the screen went black, then displayed one line: "Your submission has been received." Ethan leaned back, breathless. It was done. He stared at the flickering candle on his table, realizing he'd just lit a fuse that couldn't be put out. Somewhere in that moment, the truth stopped belonging to him and became everyone's. Within hours, the internet stirred. On a small forum, someone posted a link to Hawthorne's secret footage. Then another user shared it. Then hundreds. By sunrise, it had crossed continents. News outlets picked it up, influencers reacted, and hashtags flooded the timelines. The truth was viral, unstoppable, raw, undeniable. Laura awoke to the sound of her phone buzzing violently on the nightstand. Dozens of missed calls, hundreds of messages. She blinked at the flood of notifications. "We saw the video." You were right. Justice for Laura. Her breath caught in her throat as she opened one link. And there it was. The recording. Her own voice echoing from every screen. For a moment she couldn't move. Watching herself stand against Richard in that office brought everything back. The fear, the anger, the humiliation. But now the world could see what really happened. Tears blurred her vision as she whispered, "Someone found it." She didn't know who, but gratitude filled the cracks in her chest. Meanwhile, Richard Hawthorne sat in his penthouse office, coffee steaming beside untouched papers. His assistant rushed in, pale and shaking. "Sir, you need to see this." The billionaire turned toward the monitor. The footage played, filling the room with his own voice, arrogant, commanding. "The law bends to those who pay for it." His expression hardened into disbelief, then fury. "Find out who leaked it," he growled. His empire was shaking. Phone lines jammed, investors panicking, journalists waiting outside his gates. For the first time in years, control slipped through his fingers. The illusion of power had cracked, and the world was watching the man behind it crumble in real time. Ethan watched the chaos unfold from his apartment. Every news channel ran the same footage. His phone buzzed non-stop with messages from colleagues, some supportive, others horrified. But he felt strangely calm, like a storm had finally passed through him. He whispered to himself, "It's out now. It's not my secret anymore." That night, Laura stepped onto her balcony, wind sweeping her hair across her face. The city glowed beneath her, alive, electric, different. For the first time in weeks, she breathed without fear. She didn't know who had freed the truth, but she silently thanked them. Somewhere out there, someone had risked everything just to give her back her name. By morning, the world had already chosen sides. News anchors replayed the leaked footage on every channel. Headlines screamed betrayal and corruption. Hawthorne exposed. Corporate giant faces criminal inquiry. Richard's empire, once untouchable, was now bleeding in public view. Every clip, every replay, carved away his image of power. Laura watched from her small apartment, wrapped in a blanket, her coffee growing cold. The footage looped endlessly on her screen, her own trembling voice saying, "That's illegal." Hearing herself again felt surreal. For the first time since her dismissal, She saw herself not as the victim of a scandal, but as the symbol of resistance. The world finally knew. Messages flooded her inbox, former colleagues apologizing, strangers thanking her, journalists begging for interviews. One reads simply, "You gave us courage." The words broke her. She covered her mouth to keep from sobbing. It wasn't fame she felt. It was validation, the return of a dignity she thought was gone forever. Meanwhile, chaos ignited inside Hawthorne Industries. Board members demanded emergency meetings. Investors froze assets. Richard stormed through the corridors like a ghost in his own kingdom. "Shut it down!" he barked at his PR director. "Every platform, every channel!" But truth had no switch to flip. It was already everywhere. He watched helplessly as analysts on live television debated his fate. One anchor said, "If the footage is authentic, we're looking at a clear case of corporate fraud." Another added, "The lawyer, Laura Mendez, deserves reinstatement and recognition." Hearing her name linked to words like innocent and courageous made Richard's chest tighten with rage. In the middle of the chaos, Ethan sat alone in his apartment, scrolling through social media. Every post about the leak carried her name, Laura Mendez. The world was rallying behind her. For the first time in his life, he saw what justice looked like outside his father's shadow. Still, a chill ran through him. He knew Richard's anger, and he knew what came next. That evening, reporters gathered outside Laura's building. Flashing lights filled the street and microphones reached for her window. She hesitated before stepping outside. The cameras turned instantly. "Laura, how do you feel now that the truth is out?" someone shouted. She took a deep breath, steadying her voice. "Relieved," she said softly, "and grateful, not for revenge, but for justice." Her answer spread across the internet in minutes. Millions shared her words, calling her brave, honest, heroic. Inside his penthouse, Richard threw his glass against the wall. "She'll pay for this," he hissed. But even he could feel the shift, the loss of control, the slow unraveling of the empire he'd built on silence and fear. Later that night, Laura sat by her window again, watching the lights of the city flicker like stars. Somewhere out there, she knew, was the person who had risked everything to release that footage. She didn't know his name yet, but she felt their connection through every headline, every comment, every breath of freedom she took. And high above, in a darkened office, Ethan looked out at the same skyline. Their worlds had collided through truth, though neither had met the other. In two separate rooms, both whispered the same words into the night. "Thank you." 2 days after the leak, the government officially launched an inquiry into Hawthorne Industries. News drones hovered above the company's headquarters as investigators in dark suits walked through the glass doors. Cameras captured the moment, the empire under siege. Richard watched the footage in silence, his jaw set, his world shrinking inch by inch. Board members turned on him overnight. "We can't protect you anymore, Richard," said one over a video call. "This goes beyond PR." His legal team resigned within hours, citing irreconcilable ethical conflicts. The same phrase he had once used to fire Laura now appeared on his own termination notice. The irony stung more than he would admit. Meanwhile, Laura received an unexpected call from the Department of Justice. The agent's voice was calm, respectful. "Ms. Mendez, we'd like your cooperation. You're not under investigation. You're a witness." For a moment, she couldn't speak. The same system that had buried her was now asking for her help. "I'll be there," she finally said. Walking into the courthouse felt surreal. The marble floors, the echo of footsteps, the scent of paper and coffee, all familiar yet changed. This time, she wasn't defending a client. She was defending the truth. As she passed through the metal detector, a flash from a camera caught her off guard. The reporters outside shouted her name like a battle cry. Inside, she faced the federal panel. They asked precise questions, dates, names, conversations. She answered with calm precision, her voice steady. Every detail she recalled aligned perfectly with the footage. One investigator nodded, another scribbled something down. Laura felt the balance of power shifting, inch by inch, truth reclaiming its place. At the same time, Richard's penthouse had become a war room. His lawyers, the few who remained, argued strategy. "We can claim manipulation," one said. "The footage could be fake." Richard slammed his hand on the table. "It's real," he growled, before realizing what he'd just admitted. The room fell silent. The walls that once held power now held guilt. Outside, the media swarmed. Protesters gathered with signs reading, "Justice for Laura and no one above the law." Employees began leaking internal emails, confirming shady practices. The Hawthorne name, once a symbol of luxury and dominance, had become a synonym for deceit. The empire wasn't just falling, it was rotting from within. After hours of testimony, Laura stepped out into the courthouse steps. Flashbulbs blinded her, but this time she didn't look down. She faced the cameras, spine straight, heart steady. "The truth matters," she said, "even when it costs you everything." The crowd erupted. Applause, shouts, emotion. She smiled softly. "But sometimes it gives you everything back." Across the street, Ethan watched from a distance, hidden beneath a hood. Her standing there, unbroken, and felt something shift inside him. Pride, relief, and a touch of fear. He knew his father wouldn't surrender easily. The real war was only beginning, and both of them were now part of it. As Laura disappeared into the crowd of reporters, the sky darkened again, thunder rumbling in the distance. Justice had found its footing, but vengeance was still in the air. Somewhere in that storm, Richard Hawthorne was planning his next move. Richard Hawthorne's penthouse was silent, too silent, the kind of silence that follows destruction. Shattered glass glittered on the marble floor. A whiskey bottle overturned beside an untouched decanter. He had spent the entire night replaying the footage, searching for flaws that weren't there. The betrayal was undeniable. Someone close had done this. And now he knew who. His head of security stood at the far end of the room, pale and uneasy. "Sir," he said, voice trembling. "The metadata from the upload, it came from within our network, from your son's credentials." The words dropped like stones into water, rippling through the air. Richard didn't blink. "Leave," he said quietly. The man obeyed without another word. For a long time, Richard just stood there, staring out at the city. Lightning split the sky over the skyscrapers he once owned in spirit, now turning against him. His reflection in the glass looked like a ghost, older, colder, smaller. The son he had, groomed to inherit his empire, had dismantled it with a single act, and worst of all, he understood why. When Ethan arrived home that evening, his father was waiting in the dark. "Close the door," Richard said. His tone was calm, too calm. Ethan froze, then obeyed. The sound of the latch locking echoed like a verdict. "You uploaded it," Richard continued. "You ruined everything I built." Ethan's throat tightened, but he didn't deny it. "You built it on lies," Ethan said softly. "I just showed people the truth." Richard's hand twitched, almost imperceptibly, before curling into a fist. "You think you know the truth?" he snarled. "You think integrity feeds people, keeps lights on? The world isn't built on honesty, boy. It's built on control." His words dripped with venom, each one sharper than the last. Ethan's eyes didn't waver. "Then maybe it's time it collapses." That line hit harder than a slap. Richard's face twisted, the mask of authority cracking. "You have no idea what it cost me to build this," he shouted, pacing like a caged animal. "Everything I did for you." Ethan took a step back. "No, you did it for yourself." For a moment, neither spoke. The storm outside raged, thunder shaking the windows. Richard's breathing grew ragged, fury mixing with something else. Fear. He looked at his son and saw not rebellion, but reflection. The same fire, the same ambition, twisted into something purer. "You're just like me," Richard whispered. Ethan shook his head. "No, I'm what you should have been." The words hung in the air like a blade. Richard stepped forward, his voice breaking into desperation. "Do you understand what you've done? You've destroyed your family name. You've destroyed me." Ethan's tone softened, almost pitying. "No, Dad. You destroyed yourself the moment you asked someone to lie for you." Silence followed, heavy, final. Richard sank into his chair, suddenly looking years older. The storm outside began to fade, leaving behind a hollow stillness. Ethan turned toward the door, pausing just once to look back. "The world knows who you are now. Maybe that's justice." He walked out without waiting for a reply, his footsteps echoing through the empty hall. Left alone, Richard stared at the city that no longer belonged to him. For the first time in his life, he felt small, a man stripped of illusion. His empire was collapsing. His son had chosen truth over loyalty, and the ghost of his own conscience haunted him louder than the thunder. The mighty hawthorn had fallen, and the fall had come from within. The morning after the confrontation, the world woke to chaos. Helicopters hovered over Hawthorne Tower, filming the spectacle as federal agents entered the building. Employees stood outside, stunned, clutching their phones as news outlets streamed the live footage. Richard Hawthorne under federal investigation. The words scrolled across every screen in America. Inside the lobby, reporters flooded through the revolving doors. Cameras flashed, microphones extended, questions fired like bullets. Richard emerged from the elevator in a dark suit, his face grey and drawn. For the first time, he didn't look like a titan. He looked human, fragile, cornered, undone. "No comments," he muttered, pushing through the swarm. By noon, the company's stock had crashed. Board members resigned, investors demanded his removal, and the board voted unanimously to suspend him as CEO. His portrait was taken down from the executive wall, replaced with a temporary acting director. The empire that took decades to build had crumbled in days. The king had fallen. Across town, Laura sat in her small apartment watching the live broadcast. She didn't smile. Justice didn't feel like triumph. It felt like release, a quiet exhale after months of suffocation. She muted the TV and stared at her reflection in the black screen. "It's over," she whispered, though deep down she wasn't sure she believed it. Her phone buzzed. A message from the Bar Association. Reinstatement review approved. License restored. She stared at it for a long time, then closed her eyes. It wasn't just her career returning. It was her identity. The woman Richard tried to erase had survived. But survival came with a price. She would never see the world with the same innocence again. At the same time, Ethan held a press conference outside the courthouse. Cameras crowded around him as he made his first public statement. "The footage you saw was real. I leaked it because truth should never be buried to protect power. My father taught me ambition. Laura Mendes taught me integrity." His words spread like wildfire, redefining the narrative. The crowd erupted. Some called him brave, others called him a traitor. But Ethan didn't flinch. He knew that courage didn't come from applause, it came from consequence. When he stepped off the podium, he saw Laura watching from across the street, hidden behind the crowd. Their eyes met for a fleeting second, enough to say, "Thank you," without words. Richard watched the press conference from his penthouse, alone. His phone buzzed non-stop, lawyers, creditors, journalists. He didn't answer any of them. Instead, He poured himself a drink and stared out at the skyline that once bowed to his name. The silence in that room was deafening, filled with ghosts of the choices he couldn't undo. That evening, federal officers arrived with a warrant. Richard opened the door without resistance. No words, no fight, just a quiet surrender. The cameras caught every moment, the cuffs, the flash, the cold walk to the car. The man who believed himself untouchable was finally touched by justice. The image would be replayed for years. As Laura watched that final clip on her TV, she didn't feel vengeance, only peace. The story had ended the way truth stories rarely do, with consequences. But as she turned off the screen and looked out at the city lights, she sensed something deeper. This wasn't just his fall. It was the start of her rise. Weeks passed after Richard's arrest, and the storm slowly began to calm. The headlines faded, the protests subsided, and the world moved on to its next scandal. But for Laura, silence was strange, almost heavy. She spent her mornings walking through the city, learning how to breathe again. Every stranger's glance still carried the ghost of recognition, but it no longer hurt. One afternoon, she sat at a small cafe near the courthouse, sipping tea and reading a case file out of habit. She didn't work there anymore, but the law was still in her bones. A woman approached her table, tall, kind-eyed, wearing a simple navy suit. "Ms. Mendez." Laura looked up. "I'm from the Integrity Legal Foundation," the woman said. "We help victims of workplace injustice. We'd be honored if you joined us." For a moment, Laura didn't respond. The offer hit deeper than it sounded. "You want me to defend others like me?" she asked softly. The woman smiled. "No one understands integrity better than someone who lost everything for it." Laura felt a lump form in her throat. It wasn't just a job offer. It was a chance to turn her pain into purpose. She nodded. "I'll do it." That night, she walked through her apartment with new eyes. The same walls that once echoed loneliness now held a quiet sense of possibility. She opened her closet, took out her old briefcase, and ran her fingers over the worn leather. It smelled faintly of rain, the same rain that fell the day she was fired. "Full circle," she whispered, almost smiling. The next morning, her phone buzzed again, a message from an unknown number. But this time, she recognized it immediately. "Congratulations on the new position. You deserve it." Her heart skipped. "Ethan." She hesitated, then typed back, "Thank you. You didn't have to risk everything for me." His reply came seconds later. "Maybe I needed to risk something to remember who I am." Later that day, Laura met Ethan in person for the first time. They chose a quiet park by the river, away from cameras and noise. When he arrived, he looked different, lighter, yet older. They stood in silence for a moment before he said, "I'm sorry for what my father did." Laura shook her head gently. "You have nothing to apologize for. You did what he never could. You faced the truth." They sat on a bench, the city skyline glowing in the distance. "I thought exposing him would make me feel free," Ethan said, "but it just made me see how trapped I'd been." Laura smiled faintly. "Freedom doesn't come from destroying someone, Ethan. It comes from refusing to become them." He let the words sink in. For the first time, they both felt understood. As the sun set, they spoke about rebuilding, not empires, but integrity. Laura told him about the foundation and the cases she hoped to take. Ethan offered to help, not as a Hawthorne, but as a volunteer, a technician, someone trying to make things right. "Then maybe," she said softly, "we can turn this story into something good." Before leaving, Ethan handed her a small flash drive. "This belongs to you," footage, he said. "You should keep it." Laura took it carefully, as if it were something sacred. "No," she said after a moment. You keep it. You earned it. Their hands brushed, not romantic but deeply human, a gesture of mutual forgiveness. As Ethan walked away, Laura stood by the river, the city lights reflecting off the water. She felt the weight of the past lift, replaced by something fragile but real: hope. Behind her, the wind carried faint echoes of the storm that once destroyed her, but tonight it sounded different, softer, almost like peace. The courthouse was packed. Journalists filled every bench, cameras lined the hallways, and the sound of murmurs rippled through the air like static. Outside, protesters gathered beneath grey skies, holding signs that read, "Justice for truth, and no one above the law." It wasn't just another trial. It was a reckoning, and everyone knew it. Laura walked through the entrance with quiet composure. Her black suit fit perfectly, but it wasn't armor anymore. It was a statement that she had survived and that integrity could stand taller than money. She clutched a folder of documents, though she didn't need them. The truth was no longer buried in paperwork. It was written in the world's eyes. Inside the courtroom, Richard Hawthorne sat at the defense table, flanked by new attorneys who looked more nervous than confident. His face was pale, thinner, his arrogance replaced by exhaustion. When Laura entered, he turned his head for the first time in months to look at her. Their eyes met. She didn't look away. For the first time, neither did he. The judge entered, and the room rose. The trial began with the government presenting its case: forged contracts, falsified statements, financial manipulation. Piece by piece, the empire Richard had built was dissected before the world. Ethan sat in the back row, watching, hands clasped tightly. The man on trial was his father, and yet he barely recognized him. When Laura was called to the stand, the room fell silent. She took the oath, her voice steady. The prosecutor asked her to describe the day of the confrontation. "Mr. Hawthorne asked me to falsify a document," she said clearly. "I refused." Every word was simple, but it carried the weight of everything she had endured. Truth didn't need to shout, it only needed to stand. Richard's lawyer tried to twist her words. "So you admit you defied your employer's directive?" Laura nodded. "I did what the law required me to do, and I paid the price for it." The lawyer smirked. "And now you're the hero?" Laura looked straight at him. "No, I'm just someone who stopped being afraid." The gallery murmured. Even the judge seemed to pause. As the evidence played, the infamous video, Richard stared at the screen like a man confronting his own reflection. His voice filled the courtroom again. That same chilling arrogance. "The law bends to those who pay for it." And beside it, Laura's answer, "Not if someone stands against you." The silence that followed was deafening. When the verdict finally came, the air felt electric. The judge's voice was calm but absolute. "Guilty on all counts." The gavel struck once, sharp, final, irreversible. Richard closed his eyes, exhaling slowly. No outburst, no denial, just a quiet collapse of a man who had finally run out of lies. The crowd outside erupted in cheers. Laura left the courtroom slowly, her heels clicking on the marble floor. The sound was no longer lonely, it was victory in motion. Outside, the press surged forward, shouting questions. She stopped, smiled faintly, and said only one thing: "Justice isn't revenge, it's truth with a heartbeat." Cameras flashed. The world listened. From a distance, Ethan watched her disappear into the sunlight. The woman his father tried to destroy had become the proof that integrity could outlast empire. He turned away, feeling both sorrow and peace. Justice had spoken, and it had chosen the side of courage. Months passed, and the city slowly forgot the scandal that had consumed it. But for those who lived it, the echoes remained. The world had turned its gaze to new headlines, new dramas. Yet somewhere in the quiet corners of downtown, something new was blooming. The truth had left a scar, but from that scar, living had grown. Laura arrived early at the Integrity Legal Foundation, the small office now filled with sunlight and the buzz of purpose. Walls, once bare, were now lined with photos of clients they had helped. Workers, whistleblowers, people who once thought their voices didn't matter. She smiled as she passed them, a soft reminder that pain could be repurposed into power. Her days were long but fulfilling. She spent hours reviewing cases, mentoring young lawyers, and standing up for people who'd been silenced. Every victory, no matter how small, stitched her back together. Sometimes she'd glance at the framed news article on her wall. Lawyer fired for integrity sparks reform movement. The irony no longer hurt. It inspired her. That afternoon, a familiar voice echoed in the hallway. Still changing the world one file at a time? She turned. Ethan stood in the doorway, holding 2 coffees and an uncertain smile. He looked different now, grounded, at peace, the weight of his father's shadow finally gone. Laura laughed softly. Someone has to keep the lawyers honest. They walked to the rooftop terrace overlooking the skyline. The city looked cleaner somehow, bathed in warm light. "I heard you started working with tech education for underprivileged kids," Laura said. Ethan nodded. "Yeah, trying to build something honest for once." She smiled. "Sounds like redemption." He shrugged. "Maybe just recovery." For a while, they stood in silence, the hum of traffic below mixing with the call of distant sirens. It wasn't an awkward silence. It was the kind that belonged to people who had seen each other's darkness and survived it. "You ever think about what would have happened if you'd stayed quiet?" she asked. Ethan's gaze softened. "Every day. But then I remember your voice in that video. That's what keeps me from regretting it." Laura looked out at the horizon, skyscrapers glinting like blades of glass. "The truth cost us everything," she said. Ethan smiled faintly, "and gave us everything that actually mattered." The wind picked up, brushing strands of hair across her face. In that moment, the city felt lighter, like it too was learning how to breathe again. Before leaving, Ethan placed a small white envelope on her desk. "For the foundation," he said. "Just a donation, no strings." She opened it. Inside was a check signed not by him, but by the Hawthorne Trust, renamed and redirected to fund ethics programs for young lawyers. Laura's eyes glistened. "Your father would have hated this," she said. Ethan grinned. "That's how I know it's right." As he left, she watched him disappear into the golden glow of evening traffic. She thought about all the people she once believed had power, and how the real power had been something simpler all along. Saying no, standing firm, telling the truth. Redemption, she realized, wasn't about rewriting the past. It was about refusing to repeat it. That night, she turned off the office lights and stepped outside. The air was cool, alive with the sound of the city moving forward. She looked up at the skyline, at the towers that once symbolized corruption, now just silent shapes against the stars. For the first time in years, Laura smiled without sadness. The storm had ended, the law had prevailed, and she was finally free. A year had passed since the trial, and the world had changed in quiet, invisible ways. New laws were written, whistleblower protections strengthened. Ethics became more than a word companies used to sound respectable. It became a movement. And at the heart of that movement stood one story, still whispered in classrooms and boardrooms alike. The lawyer who said no. Laura sat in a university auditorium, watching a new generation of law students debate moral responsibility. One young woman raised her hand and said, "Integrity doesn't need to be loud, it just needs to last." The room nodded in agreement. Laura smiled quietly from the back row. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her story was already speaking for her. After the session, she walked outside into the late afternoon light. The campus buzzed with energy and possibility. On the bulletin board near the exit, she noticed a flyer for the Hawthorne Ethics Scholarship, founded by Ethan 6 months earlier. Below it, the tagline read, "For those who stand for truth, even when it costs them everything." She touched the paper gently, eyes soft with pride. Across town, Ethan gave a talk to a group of young entrepreneurs. His message was simple, but powerful. You can rebuild anything except integrity. That you either have or you lose forever. The audience listened in silence. When he finished, the applause was quiet but genuine, the kind that comes from respect rather than excitement. He smiled, humble, different. That night he stopped by the Integrity Foundation unannounced. Laura was still there, working late, surrounded by stacks of case files and dim light. "Still saving the world," he teased. She looked up, amused. "Still trying to keep up." They shared coffee and quiet laughter, two people bound not by tragedy anymore, but by purpose. There was peace between them, deep and earned. As they talked, Laura opened a drawer and pulled out a small, framed photograph. The skyline reflected on wet streets the day she was fired. "I keep this to remind me where it began," she said. Ethan nodded. "And I keep the footage," he replied, "not to expose anyone, just to remember that truth is never lost, only waiting." The moment hung in the air like a gentle confession. Before leaving, Ethan turned at the doorway. "You know," he said softly, "sometimes I wonder what my father would say if he saw us now." Laura smiled faintly. "Maybe nothing. Maybe this silence is his apology." Ethan held her gaze, then nodded slowly. "Then I accept it." And with that, he walked out into the night, disappearing into the city he had helped change. Laura stood at the window, watching the skyline shimmer under the streetlights. The towers no longer intimidated her. They were just structures, reminders that even the tallest buildings could crumble when built on lies. She whispered to herself, "The law bends for no one, but the truth, it endures." Her reflection in the glass smiled back, steady and whole. Months later, a documentary aired titled "The Price of Integrity." It ended with Laura's voice narrating, "Sometimes losing everything is how we remember who we are." The screen faded to black over images of city lights, rain, and quiet faces staring toward a fairer world. The story was over, but its echo remained, living in everyone who chose honesty over comfort. And as the credits rolled, one final image appeared, a security camera light blinking red in the corner of a silent office, watching, waiting, the same light that had seen the truth once and would again.